I'll start off by introducing myself, and then I'll tell you what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Sterling Snow. I lead revenue at Divvy. So for us, that means marketing, sales, and customer success, so managing our revenue funnel. Obviously, what you wanted to do this morning was talk about the financial tech stack with a sales guy. Everyone woke up with that express objective, I'm sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we've learned as a company selling to controllers, CFOs, VPs of finance, and what the tech stack looks like for most of you and most of your contemporaries, and how that is evolving, and how it's going to become something different going forward. But I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Divvy and the thesis and who we are and who we're trying to become. So Divvy, we believe that today, largely, banking is backwards. You have banking services that are working towards building and having software offerings. But you largely go out and procure a bank, and then you try and see if their software works, or you have to go find that software separate. We believe that in the future, it's going to look different. You will look for a software company that offers banking services. Okay, if you go 5, 10 years in the future, that's what it's going to look like, and that's our big bet. If you want to look at what the validation behind that theory, take a quick look at what the consumer space looks like. Okay, all of these are neobanks or upstart banks in the consumer space who have garnered massive valuations, gotten out. I was reading this morning that Revolut's adding 900,000 customers a month, right? These are software companies at their core who are adding banking services and are doing that in the consumer side of things. So the Divvy thesis and the big bet here is that SMB is the next critical juncture that's going to see this shift in buyer behavior. So you've got this multi-trillion-dollar market that on one hand is software, financial software, and on the other hand is banking services. Okay? So Divvy founders identify this multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. Great. How do you start attacking that in a way that's valuable to the financial decision makers of SMBs and mid-market enterprises? You start with expense management. Okay? Most of you or your controllers or someone on your team deal with some pretty excruciating end-of-month reconciliation, chasing down receipts. I've seen some laughs. I love that. Anyone have any good stories that they want to share about? You were laughing. I feel like you have one.
No, I was just thinking of how painful it is to even get leaders to submit those expense reports and receipts and give you all that information and
100%.
trial.
I mean, in my previous jobs, I've always tried to be like a model employee. I guarantee you every month, some poor person in finance was sending me a message, scolding me about how late I was and what information I didn't fill in. And that's just kind of the world that we live in. So as the founders identify this multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, you start with expense reports. Because it sucks, because it's painful, because every single business deals with it, right? And that's a great place to start. And then we're like, well, we should make it free. They're like, really, 100% free. That's how we're going to start adding value to financial decision makers at SMB companies, okay? And then, okay, we've got to keep the lights on somehow, so how do we do it? Well, we're going to monetize like a bank, okay, on the back of a charge card. This is how this initially started out for Divvy. So you're making interchange on the back of a charge card. That allows you to do some pretty neat stuff on the software side of things, which we'll get into later. But this is how we add value right out of the gates to financial decision makers of SMBs. But that's really just the Trojan horse, okay? The vision of Divvy, and these are things that we have already added into one platform. We've added bill pay, budgets, travel management, again, building free software on one hand and monetizing like a bank on the other, okay? Free, beautiful software and a bank monetization strategy. So the idea, and these are all things that are live with Divvy today, the idea is that we can create a platform that allows the financial leaders of SMEs and mid-market enterprises to have one place to view all of their information, their inflows, their outflows. And that's what we're building. That's what we're excited about. That's how we feel like the market is going to change in very meaningful ways going forward. Because today, what are your options? You are all looking at this slide, and you probably use 3 to 5 of these different things, sometimes more, sometimes less. But they're disparate systems that don't talk to each other, that create quite a bit of work for you. But it's been the way that it's been done for a long time, and so it's how you work. Okay? But Divvy is all about changing that, creating a financial platform, creating a central nervous system for the financial leaders of the future. So, how do we think about ourselves in this cute little way? It's kind of like Salesforce for financial software. And it's more like Google because it's free, and we make money like American Express. So we put a slide together with our 3 favorite logos, and we made it work for us. This is the stack. Okay, we're talking about the financial stack. You can swap out QuickBooks for a different ERP. You can swap out Expensify for Concur. Like, you can make some edits here, but largely for everyone in this room, you are managing some variation of this stack. Okay? It's complicated, it's confusing, it's expensive. It doesn't really provide a great experience for your end users in a lot of cases. And the way that we see it happening is all in one centralized tool and completely free. That's Divvy's mission, right? If you're talking about who we are and what we're building and what we're going to become, this is what we're doing. So and what's traction been like? This is a fun one. This is just a fun slide to show. One of the fastest companies ever to get to 10 million ARR from a software background, and we've done a hell of a lot of growing since this. So it's been incredibly rewarding to talk to learn from the financial decision makers and to build products that make their lives easier, that change the way that they conduct and manage their day-to-day activities. So we're going to go through some of the specifics, and please, for the love, jump in with questions if you want to break up some of the monotony here. But we're going to talk about what that actually looks like and how you can unlock your tech stack to spend smarter, to make money smarter. And then we're going to go through kind of the differences between proactive versus reactive, how you understand where your business is month to date, year to date, all those things. We'll do a Q&A, and then we'll wrap up there. So you all have some sort of variation for these activities, okay? You have a travel management solution. You use TravelBank. You use TripActions. You do something to manage this. You have a corporate card program. Sometimes that includes virtual cards, ghost cards. You have an expense management tool. Again, that's Expensify. That's Concur. That's something in that side of the world. You use something for budgeting. Okay, largely it's based in Excel, but you have other tools that help with that. And then obviously the big one for a lot of this is accounting and getting it back into that system of record. And that makes up, in large part, the financial tech platform, the financial stack that we see and run across most commonly with the controllers and financial leaders of SMBs. And it's like I said, it's pretty darn expensive, it's pretty darn disparate, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, if you were going to sit down and build it all again from scratch, you wouldn't build it this way. You just wouldn't. It wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't have the efficiencies that you're looking for. It wouldn't have the time savings that you're looking for. It hasn't really reached the potential of what software can and should be doing for us from a financial management perspective. And it causes headaches. This is where we start seeing people laugh a little bit. You have this closing period, right? And you have extended beyond that period this reimbursement window. So you don't actually know or understand what has been spent, what exactly you need to account for. You can't pinpoint it as accurately as you would like to. And when I was deciding to join Divvy, the founder talked to me about his business. He was running a restaurant group, okay? And one of the most frustrating things was not being able to see in real time how the money was being spent, where it was being spent, and why it was being spent. Okay, and that was one of the genesis for starting Divvy and getting all of these things to talk to each other in real time, avoid closing windows, and avoid the headaches and delays that typically exist within the financial stack and the procedures and processes that we have in place. But not only that, when this occurs, you're actually losing money. Okay, when you can't see what's being spent, you're losing money. You have out-of-policy spending. You have overcharges by vendors, like simple oversights. You have process costs and software costs and fraud exposure, and people who just spend because they know no one's actually going line item by line. I'm getting more laughs, I love it. Line item by line item to catch my lunch at Ruth's Chris. Okay? I'm a sales guy. Like, if you aren't watching it, I'm spending it. I promise. I promise. They're all back at the office right now that you're gone, and they're going out to nicer lunches today. But it's a very interesting thing that happens when we're able to show people how much money they're leaving on the table simply because they don't have real-time visibility in a centralized location because they're running too many different programs and too many different softwares. And how do most people feel about their tech stack? How many Concur users we have in here? Got a couple of Concur users? You have strong feelings about Concur?
I think it's good for the front-end user, but for the back-end user, it's pretty terrible.
Okay.
Like for accounting and for, yeah.
Okay, I agree with that. That makes sense. You have any Concur feedback for it?
It's a lot better than our old paper expense.
Okay. And that was really what happened with Expensify and Concur. The big value proposition was stop putting your receipts into a spreadsheet and handing it off at someone's desk. Take a picture, put it through this application. That was the big value prop, right? And it was a step up, without a doubt. But there are ways that we can make that so much better, completely automated, in real time, all of those things that Concur and Expensify don't give us today. Sometimes we hear people talk about how much of a pain it is, about how they would love to switch, but it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. And you have to get a lot of different people to buy into new programs. And most people will say at the end of the day, what we're doing is good, but it's not great. Like it's not like achieving my wildest dreams if I could draw something up and make it function just that way. And that's kind of how it works. So as we talk about this, we'll go through and see which parts of the stack Divvy specifically addresses and how we're taking a different angle on this. So corporate cards, right? Everyone has slightly different procedures around corporate cards, but largely you're only giving your corporate cards to a certain echelon of your company. Okay, maybe the 20% most senior people get that corporate card. The rest you're managing through a reimbursement program, and then, like I said, you're using some of the softwares that we've talked about. Other less common solutions. You're using something that's prepaid. You're using a fleet card. You're doing some of those using some of those other tools to make sure that you stay within your parameters. Okay? And there's pros and cons, right? Personal cards, they have low risk to the company. They encourage this sort of self-managing philosophy. Cons, you have no idea when it happens. That reimbursement is going to show up on your desk in like 2 quarters. And then you're really not going to catch my Ruth's Chris lunch. It requires a very lengthy process, and it encourages bad spending habits. What we notice is people are personally incentivized through points and rewards to spend as much on that personal card as they can. It's not necessarily with the company's best interest in mind. If you go to the corporate cards, you got some pros, it's easy to manage, you've got some visibility, but the cons are you can't give it to everyone realistically, right? You're not going to hand out the corporate Amex to everyone. You can't easily change credit amounts. So that means you can't really control the spending that happens there. And then there's a security risk, right? When you have corporate cards and it gets handed out to different people because you want so-and-so to grab lunch, but they don't have a card and they don't want to make a reimbursement. There's pros and cons to both of these programs. So,
question?
Yeah.
From a Divvy perspective, when you've gone to people and said you're going to have a MasterCard if you work with Divvy, You get pushback of old school people who really want the Amex Platinum card and are married to the idea of an Amex Platinum card?
You know, when we go in and talk to people, there's always an element of this is what I know and this is what I've used. But when you walk through like what the actual value proposition is and being able to unify and have that powerful software and the cost savings that are associated with that, people are usually pretty open to switching away from even the Amex, which comes up a lot because they've done a really good job with like loyalty and rewards. The value proposition of the beautiful free software usually is able to overcome that for most companies.
Well, it's not the company standpoint, but the user standpoint.
So if you go to like me, the sales rep, say, hey, I'm taking away your Amex, yeah, I'd trade that in 2 seconds for not having to do expense reports. And most of the time, people feel very similarly that the amount of like work that they have to do to submit expense reports isn't outweighed by the perks of a corporate card that they've been issued. Good questions. So this is when you look at Divvy, when you look at the interface, you've got web, mobile, and then a physical smart card, the MasterCard that he was just mentioning. And the way that this works, it has all of the pros that we talked about with the corporate card program with none of the cons. So in real time, you can dynamically change card limits. Okay, so you can set parameters around budgets and spending limits. And you can make sure that people have access to the funds that they need, but not so much that you have outstanding liabilities. You can see those in the dashboards at all times, like exactly to the second, what your company or department or project budget has actually spent versus what you've asked them to do as the financial head of your company. And so the old way, you see transactions as they happen and you swipe to work. And the way that we're doing it, and one of the real value adds to the financial leaders that we work with is that when you swipe, it goes all the way to your books, right? So when you swipe, that expense report is done, is pre-categorized, is pre-coded, maps to your GLs, and goes into your accounting system, right? Like it is essentially done. Now you can require as many different levels of approvals or reviews as you need for your processes, but it's that simple. It's swipe to books technology. And that happens through a couple of different ways. We also offer virtual cards, okay? How many people have like a virtual card program that they use? One year, couple? It's something that is obviously gaining a lot of popularity in kind of an age where we're worried more about privacy and security and some of those types of things. But Divvy also takes a pretty cool spin on this technology. You have your physical and your virtual card. Your virtual card in real time creates unique numbers for any vendor you want to pay. So let's take the example of like recurring subscriptions. A lot of people, as they onboard with Divvy, one of the first things they do is move over their recurring costs and their recurring subscriptions to protect against things like overcharging. Okay, Salesforce, they accidentally charged me more. If I set that virtual card limit, it's going to decline. They're going to have to call me to tell me why they're charging me for additional seats, as opposed to me trying to A, catch it, which is a risky thing by itself, and B, reach out to them and fight and get my money back and make sure that that subscription is exactly what I thought I was paying for. And these are awesome. If you went and talked to current Divvy users, one of their favorite features is the ability to create as many virtual cards as you want. Again, everything we do is free, so you're able to have one-to-one relationships with vendors. You're able to pay invoices as burner cards, so you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to that card number in the future. And a number of other security and privacy benefits that come along with that, which is what we're talking about here. Has anyone ever had the grave misfortune of getting a card hacked and that card was on file with a lot of different vendors and you have to go through the process? Yeah, you've done it. Did you lose your card? No, not you. That happens a lot, and it's a pain. So that's one of the most one of the easiest value adds as we go in and start onboarding companies. have control, convenience, and security, and don't worry about any of the externalities that can happen and get in your way. You also have different virtual card types, for example. You have a burner card for a first-time vendor. You're not super sure you want them to have a card on file. It's going to self-destruct in 7 minutes, or sorry, 7 days, or whatever you want that limit to be. And then you have recurring cards for the people who you do trust, and making sure that your vendors are still in a happy, easy place with you. So there's obviously the mobile expense management piece, and this is a thought exercise that we like to go through. If you're sending people to a conference, you're going to send them to Vegas, how do you make sure that they stay under budget? What do you guys do currently if you're sending a team to a trade show? How do you make sure that they come in under budget? Anyone have anything that they do that works, or that they just do? You got something? He uses Divvy, so this guy's smart. Yeah, we'll settle up after. Anyone, like, what is the typical answer? Blakely, what did you used to do at Instructure?
Her.
So what, you would just like plan for them to
You
spend?
tell them it's 25, but I budget 30.
Smart. And that's really the only way that that finance leaders outside of a controlled system are able to make sure that they will come in under budget for specific projects.
And there's threatening.
And there's threatening. What does that look like?
Well, it's kind of fun.
Okay. What do you like? What is it? I'm going to take your card away if you come over. Do not come over for this Vegas trip.
It's just communication. So
Okay.
here's where it's at. Here's if there's leeway or not. It's communication.
For sure. Just making sure that you lean on the relationship and make sure that it's clearly communicated. For sure. Okay, that's an interesting one that Divvy fixes with what we'll get into right after this.
But on that note, can I ask a context
Yeah.
question?
Please.
Well, as CFOs, we play a fine balance, and it is a fine balance between enablement versus control.
Yep.
And you've got to have elements of both, and you have to know when to use which tools and
Yep.
things like that. I've noticed, this may be dated, but I've noticed that Divvy's brand messaging tends to emphasize the control more. You know, a video of a CEO micromanaging expenses at a tight levels and things like that, which you know, I get it, gets a point across, but I'm wondering at a brand strategy level and how that impacts the development of your technology and what you're doing, how Divvy looks at balancing those two important factors.
It's a really good question, and one that gets asked a lot of times. A lot of times what a controller or a CFO really wants is, in first place, is like visibility. I want to be able to see and understand everything. And then once I can see and understand everything, I want the ability to control it, but I don't necessarily want to control it. That's kind of like a last resort. If your communication and if the other like more soft controls that you have fail, then you start having a stricter parameter on what people are or aren't allowed to do. But for us, our job is to build a software that fits with the way that you want to do finances at your company. We don't pretend to know the exact right way that everyone is going to do everything, but if we have enough flexibility built into the platform, you can decide what the right level of control is. Right? You can tailor it to who you and your company want to be. Does that make sense? And we have a couple other ones here. Number 3 is a fun one. In the end, it's the end of the month. You need to close the books. All expense reports are supposed to be in. With 10% of the team using corporate cards, how can you know all expenses have really been submitted? Anyone have any good answers there? That's tricky. A lot of times, like I said, my Ruth Chris lunch is going to show up for a couple quarters. And that's why the ability to expense and reconcile in real time is a huge deal. So as soon as you swipe your card, like I said, that transaction is categorized, is coming out of a specific budget, and it has the ability to flow through to your chart of accounts on the back end. That's what we mean when we say swipe to books. And that's truly creating an environment in which we make financial leaders' lives better. Again, with the distinct understanding that we have to make it flexible enough to fit a lot of the procedures and policies that diverse finance functions have. So, this was your point, is how do we empower and not control your organization? If you're a spender, you have the ability to make purchases quickly and automate your expense report, okay? If you're a manager, you have the ability in real time and the tools to give funds as needed. So for my team, they can easily request and I can send funds. It's this Venmo dynamic if it's outside of their pre-approved limits, okay? And then for the finance leaders, you're empowered to obviously be make sure that expense reports die on your watch. You're able to reduce reconciliation time, and you have the controls that you need to run your function. Budget controls. This is a big one as we talk to folks. This was more on the Vegas thing. How do we have budgets that are meaningful, that you can track, that in real time have any sort of value if you pull them up in the middle of a month, okay? This is how a budget in Divvy looks. It's going to tell you how much is spent, how much is assigned or available for spenders to go through, and then how much is just left in the budget that hasn't been assigned to either physical or virtual cards or bill pay ACH transactions. And this, so personal experience, so running a marketing team at a company called Jive before I joined Divvy, always had a budget, never had any freaking clue at any point in the month where I was at in my spending, right? Like I'm doing the best I can in Excel, but I know I'm missing stuff. And frankly, when the month ends, you just kind of like hope and pray, and you wait for a couple weeks, and then finance, without fail, comes back to me, the marketing guy, every time and says, dude, you went over by 20%. Like, what gives? Or some months they come back and say, hey, you didn't spend all your budget. Should we be shrinking your budget? It was very hard for me as a budget owner to have any clue in real time how I was performing against the funds and the resources that I've been given. Divvy fixes that. And it's also, this is where you can have as much control as you want, but it's enforceable, right? So if you say, Mr. Marketer, you get 200 grand this quarter and that's what you get, then they can't go over without having communication with you. And that's been a very healthy thing for me as a budget owner in a not finance function to work with finance under that guise instead of kind of spend first, ask for forgiveness later mentality, which has been awesome. And then we get into bill pay and AP and how people's functions work around this. This has been an interesting one for us. This is one of the newer products that we've launched. So after massive amounts of research and talking to our customers and to prospective customers, we found a lot of pain points. There's a lot of stress around, have I paid everyone's invoice? If someone dropped something off on my desk that I lost. There's a lot of wasted time back and forth saying, Sterling, this is from your budget and marketing. Do you want me to pay it? There's a lot of back and forth that ends up wasting time. There's a lot of actual inefficiencies around the spend methods. Okay, you're either writing a check or you're paying your bank to send out wires and ACHs, different fees associated with those kinds of things. And then there's the gray area that I was talking about, which is the people who you've given budget to don't actually know where they stand. And that's all, speaking from experience, that's a hard place to be because finance gives me resources. I want to spend exactly as much as they've given me, but no more. And outside of this, that's who I am as an employee, and I want to be respectful of their planning and their processes. But if I can't see it and it's that gray area, it's really it's going to be hard, okay? So with Divvy Bill Pay, you get to track your expenses in one place. You get to share responsibility, but keep control for the invoices that come in and out of your business. And you stop paying money just to pay your bills. This is a fun tagline for us. Everyone who isn't using Divvy Bill Pay is paying money to pay their bills. Whether it's a manual check writing function, or again, it's the wires or ACHs or different other fees associated with making those payments. So, How many businesses are writing checks, like in one form or another? There we go, Maggleby's Factory, right? Lots of hands. We've got some manual check writers in here. Please stop. Yeah.
Can I back, are you able to automate any significant portion of the triple match in the prior slide, the purchase order invoice receiving doc?
So are you talking like more P2P automation? Or which specifically?
Yeah, I mean, you got a warehouse and you issued a PO to get this inventory in, and is there really a PO, and did that match up against what was invoiced, and does that match the receiving doc, that traditional triple match? How much
So
do you automate?
that is something that this was, again, one of our newer products, and that is a fast follow that we've been working on building. But the answer is like within a couple of weeks, we're going to have a lot of those types of things built into this, because it's a process that's kind of fraught with a back and forth that needs like matching and automation. So good question. So this was back to stop writing checks, please. This is a cool quote from a customer. Before Divvy, we were using a lot of paper checks. Divvy's helped us reduce the paper checks, and all that goes into that process. It's made us more efficient. One of the best things we get to hear in our jobs is that we saved X amount of man hours, or the team now has bandwidth to go do this new and more important and more strategic thing, and they get to stop. Doing manual inefficient processes. This is now with Divvy Bill Pay, any sort of payment comes through and is able to be paid. So this is like the beginnings of what you're talking about with recognizing invoices and making sure that they match us, some OCR in there, and making sure that everything gets paid and gets paid out of the right budget and mapped appropriately. And there's some real advantages to using this type of a bill pay system. Your budgets are always up to date in real time, independent of the spending mechanism. So if you're card spend, if it's an ACH, it doesn't matter. It's all available in that single platform from that budget that you've given, and you're good to go. You keep a division of duties. So if I'm the marketing leader with a P&L responsibility, I can give you an invoice that I have already approved that needs to be paid, and all you have to do is review and basically fund it. But there's this division of duties that shares responsibility, so it's not just, oh, I dropped an invoice on so-and-so's desk, and we're going to see what happens. You get to control your cash. You get to proactively limit overspending. Again, this is the idea that you don't want to encourage a culture where people spend first and ask for forgiveness later. You want to make sure that you've proactively addressed, communicated, and enabled everyone with enough funds, but not limiting you to overspending possibilities. You get to play less phone tag, or Slack tag, or email tag, or whatever kind of tag you play at your company. With Divvy, we actually go and contact the vendors, make sure that their preferred method of payment is on record, and make sure that we are sending that payment. And we do it all for free, again. Free software on one hand, monetization like a bank on the other.
One more, and then I'll stop asking so many questions. But by the time you get the invoice, the money has probably already been spent in the sense that you've incurred a legally binding liability and obligation. I'm curious if you have plans to address the incurrence of the liability, which is when we're booking it, as opposed to when it's due on the cash side.
That's a great question. I haven't heard that one come up a ton, but basically, if I'm understanding you right, the ability to like take that out of a budget when you've booked the expense, as opposed to when like money leaves the bank account.
Not even when you book the expense so much as when you're signing a contract.
Okay.
I'm signing up for a subscription. I'm issuing a PO for these goods. I'm committing to a trade show.
Yeah.
6 months from now, the legally binding contract. That means that invoice is coming. And when the invoice is coming and you've accepted the services, you're going to pay that.
Yeah. So I haven't heard that one a ton, but I like that feedback, and that's something that I'll chat with our product leaders about. Thanks. So again, we're working our way through this financial stack, right? We're showing how how with a solution like Divvy, with an actual financial platform, you can put all of this into one place that allows you to make your lives a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient. Talk about travel. Everyone has at least parts of their business that are traveling. Divvy Travel is a partnership between us and Trip Actions. How many people use or have heard of Trip Actions? A decent amount of people who've heard and know about who they are. That's who our travel partner is, and this allows you to have enforceable travel budgets. You get to set your limits. How much do you want people spending on hotel rooms a night? What's the closest someone can cut it when booking a flight? Again, allowing you to be as controlling or enabling you to be as benevolent as you want to be. But that's the system that allows you to go in and make sure that all of that is happening and in the way that you want it to happen. So again, Divvy brings all of these things under one roof. That's the real value proposition. And when we start to get financial leaders really excited, it's the premise that you can have one system and in one place to really complete all of your tasks, with adjacencies and integrations and with all of the other things that you need. But to simplify that financial tech stack is something that matters a lot when we go out. And our mission, again, is to make money smarter, to create the financial nervous system, to create the true north, the system of record, and to build for you. That's ultimately what we're building in the company that we want to be. Divvy is completely free. We want to be, the vision. If you sat down our CEO and put truth serum in him, the vision is that every SMB in the world uses Divvy. That's the kind of company that we want to build. One of the ways that we actually make that feasible is by making it free. So it's not cost prohibitive to folks who do want to use it. So we're going to end with some Q&A here. Anyone have any questions or any ideas or anything you want to chat about? Yeah.
So I know you work with, I have some clients that use QuickBooks Online.
Yeah.
Same with you. What about just QuickBooks Desktop or other software?
Yeah. So we have integrations with like the major players. So QuickBooks Desktop, Xero, NetSuite's coming soon. Like a bunch of those types of things we work together. Yeah.
And what about I have some clients where they allocate to different departments, so they might have one bill that is due 6
So like splitting a transaction, yeah, that's something that Divvy can handle. So you can like split, say like marketing's going to pay for half and sales is going to pay for half. It's going to hit their budgets in this different way. Split transactions is something that's super simple to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Does it allow for classes within QuickBooks as well, or just accounts?
Yeah, you can. It's completely configurable to how you run QuickBooks or NetSuite or anything like that. Yeah. Hey, yep.
So on your product roadmap, you're not looking to replace, for example, NetSuite's inventory and production processes or the same thing in QuickBooks. You're mostly focused around payments and general ledger and budgets.
The idea is that we're not gonna create everything, but if we can make the system that ties into everything else you use, then we've done our job. And you're right, there is a specific focus on the inflows and outflows of how payments work. And then we'll integrate and partner with the best in class to make sure that all of those functions, again, can mirror, come in and out of Divvy. Yeah.
So some fintech companies offer their products at a discount or for free while they're building up customers.
Yeah.
Is there any chance Divvy ever, after building up customers, starts charging a fee?
Yeah, we're gonna get all of you to sign up, and then we'll make sure you roll it out, and then we're gonna come out with some sort of pricing structure. The answer is no. There will always be a free Divvy offering, like always. I'm not saying that in the future that doesn't mean that there aren't different tiers and different add-ons that you can pay for within the system. But there will always be core Divvy, like as you see it and know it today, will be free, right? It's sustainable. It's built off of the interchange rates and the deals that we have with our banking and card partners. So it's not like this is a loss leader that at some point we have to actually. It's already monetized. But there will be, I'm sure, as we build more advanced. Think of like advanced analytics or something like that. There are opportunities for us to have premium services that our customers can pay for, but core Divvy is going to be free forever. We have 2 here. Yep.
Yeah, so you mentioned visibility and real-time functionality. Does that only involve logging into the app, or do you also API with things like Domo? How does that work in terms of like use for personal use? You can wrap all of your finance information into one.
Yeah, great question. So for right now, like all of the dashboarding, like if you look at forecasts or real-time things, that's in Divvy. But there is a possibility in the future for really cool partnerships with other BI tools like a Domo or a Tableau or some of those things, or even for us to take a stab at building some of that functionality. I think you had a question as well.
It was more with the receipts. I've noticed even with Concur or Expensify, I can still struggle with individuals uploading an appropriate documentation that we can give to an auditor. So I don't know if you have any control. I mean, I realize in the end it goes back to management ensuring that it happens, but I just didn't know if.
Well, so what we have with Divvy and what our controller has chosen to use, again, some do, some don't, but there's just a limit. And if I don't take a picture of my receipt for anything above $75 at our company, my card's going to shut off in 24 hours. And what's nice is that Divvy, once you swipe, again, that transaction is already on my phone. So I can take a picture of it right now. I don't have to like save the receipt so that when it comes through in a few days on Concur or whatever, to then take a picture of it. It happens at point of sale. I take a picture and I'm done. And you can create the enforcement around like, well, your card gets shut off if you haven't done that. Again, some people choose to do that, some people don't. But it's certainly an option, and there are a lot of people who do choose to use it. Tommy Ashton and Divvy being one of them. Any other questions? I know we've got a few Divvy users here. What did I miss from your perspective? You guys love. I'm going to pick on Magleby and you up here, but what did I miss that you guys enjoy about using Divvy?
I think you did a pretty good job of covering it, because we were in the same boat before. We had X amount of corporate cards that we handed out, but now every single member of our team has a card with certain budgets that they're in charge of, and if it goes over, I can get a message on my phone, or our CFO gets a message on her phone saying, yep, I approve this, or what have you.
Yep.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it.
Good. Made your life a little easier. What about Magleby Construction? What do you guys like? What did I miss?
I find it to be the best of both worlds, personally. From a CFO standpoint, I can have the oversight and control I want, with also passing the feeling of empowerment onto employees. Right. So from the top end, I'm controlling, pre-agreed upon budget. We sit down together with department leaders and heads, and we set what their budget amounts are. So they've agreed to that. They've taken ownership of that, and then they just manage it from there on out. Right. I don't have to do any other oversight from there, because I can just pop right in and make sure they're following their budget. But more importantly than that, they can't spend more than their budget, and they can't spend outside of their cost goals. So in the past, if you give an employee a $10,000 credit card with a credit limit, there's always the chance they're going to spend outside of what they should spend for. With Divvy, it's you can require them to only choose the cost codes you give them. So it's empowerment without the issues with controls that you have with other credit cards.
Yeah.
So it's like parenting 101, right? Your kids think they're empowered, but you actually have more control.
I love it.
I think it boosts their pride too, because people that we didn't trust with a card previously, now they have a company card. So
that's an interesting benefit. It like increases like morale and buying. And we've actually had people tell us like their employee survey scores, like overall morale and engagement are up, because they're able to disseminate that trust and make people feel pride in the company that they're working for. It's kind of cool.
Significantly up?
What's that?
Significantly up?
No, I mean people have noticed an uptick. and they've talked to us about it, like proactively. That wasn't like something that we thought about necessarily in the beginning, but we've been able to hear that from multiple people, so.
So
Have your
one other
experience.
thing I'll chip in, Sterling, is like the customer service aspect is really huge. We were one of your guys', from what I understand it, one of the early adopters of the
Yeah.
card.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's like, the problem with going with something like Amex Concur is who do you talk about to change that app? Who do you talk about to change that software? I mean, you could probably talk to their CEO and he wouldn't even have power to change it.
Yeah.
The thing is we have, I can't even say how many different software ideas we've had for you guys, that I don't know if we're the only ones saying that you guys have actually made the change.
Absolutely.
And as of today, I can now access all of my companies from my one account.
Multi-company
I
management,
can say
that was
that
for you, my
when I
friend.
got it, so.
That's, we are sincere. That is our CEO and co-founder right there. When controllers and financial leaders talk, our company listens. That's how we're going to build ourselves into a massively successful business, is by building what you all need to do your jobs more efficiently and better. That's, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, so like you guys taking the feedback and actually making changes has been huge for us, because we've been a hard customer to deal with. We're like, it is leaps and bounds better than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Check in this time next year. Great. Okay, anything else before we wrap up? Any other questions? Okay, thanks everyone, appreciate it.